Mazel tov. I had a teacher in rabbinical school who said, if you're giving a blessing, don't stop until they start crying. But I barely got through the first sentence, so it's a good way to keep blessings and sermons short, I guess. This week's Torah portion is Parashat Balak. It contains the very famous story of a talking donkey, which many people remember from Sunday school days that we had animals that talked. Of course, the rabbis teach us that animals have always talked, but according to the Midrash, they keep their voices silent so as not to embarrass us with their intelligence. That's what the Torah says. This story of this talking donkey actually has a very poignant and powerful message. Within it is this sorcerer named Balaam, who has a connection with God, who has a prophetic connection with God. He hears God's voice, even though he would be one that we could say, in the words of Harry Potter, practices the dark arts in some way. And the king of Moab, Balak, is infuriated at the Jewish people as they're marching through the desert. And so he hires this sorcerer Balaam to curse the Jewish people. And Balaam agrees to do it on one condition, that he will only say the words that God puts into his mouth. And as these stories go in Torah, God, of course, switches things up and makes it so that Balaam, when he intends to curse, can only bless. As he stands before the Israelites to give them a curse, only blessing comes out. Once, and then twice, and then the third time, we come across the very famous line from Torah that has become famous in song. Balaam stands as he looks out upon the entire expanse of the Israelites assembled in their camps, 600,000 Jews perhaps at this moment. And intending to curse, he instead renders a blessing. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael. How beautiful are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. This past week, with the developments in Israel around the Kotel and the conversion bill, I've been wondering if perhaps Balaam's words were intended actually to be a curse after all. How beautiful are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. Why are the words tents and dwellings in the plural? Ohalecha mishkanotecha. What is the great beauty in everybody making their own tent and everybody making their own private siloed space? Wouldn't it be a greater blessing if he could have looked out upon the Jewish people and said, how beautiful is your great tent, O Israel, that all of you dwell together in it? But that, of course, is not the case. Instead, he sees this tent and this tribe separate from this tribe and this and that and this and that. Now, Rashi says that's not the way to look at it. Rashi says that when Balaam looks out and sees these tents, he sees them because he offers three blessings. He sees them from three directions. And in noticing that, he notices that none of the openings of the tents look upon anybody else's opening of the tent. And so what is beautiful here is that everybody respects the other person's privacy. That no tent looks out upon another tent's window or opening. But too much privacy, I think, leads to a lack of social responsibility. Too much cutting off and blocking out leads to isolation. There is positive peer pressure which comes with having to live alongside your neighbors as a good neighbor. When Sharon and I and our children moved into our new home in East Vancouver, it had a very old fence. So old, in fact, that it was falling apart and held up with plywood and nails and literally held up with rope and twine at times. It was falling down. And so the weather wasn't good and the time wasn't right and there wasn't any money left to replace the fence at the time. So I tore the fence down, which was, by the way, a lot of fun. Tear something down sometimes. I tore the fence down, and for about 3 months we didn't have a fence. And do you know what happened those 3 months? our neighbors came into our yard. They came in to chat. They came in to borrow a ladder or some tools, to jump on our trampoline. And about 6 weeks ago, I built a new fence. It's a beautiful cedar fence. And the Robert Frost poem was running through my head as I hammered in every nail and planted every post. Good fences make good neighbors. You know the poem? Robert Frost was wrong. Good fences make good fences, but they don't make better neighbors. I haven't seen our neighbors come into our yard since. In fact, I haven't seen our neighbors much since. They're there, but they're beyond the other side of the fence. I see just the tops of their heads, like that TV show with the builder guy, whatever it was. My problem with the Kotel Compromise, which has been put on hold by the Israeli government, goes back long before the agreement, which took 3 years to negotiate and decades even to bring to a place where they would negotiate, is that it's just building more walls between us. The compromise is to add another wall, is to create another section amongst the 2 sections that are already there, which are really already 3 sections because of the plaza behind it. Just more fences that block out what we don't want to see, or deal with, or object to. Why can't we pray together as Jews? Why do we find it necessary to bifurcate and subdivide again and again and again in order to block out that which we don't like, rather than learn to live with our differences, to live together? We need doors and windows, not walls and fences. Between Israelis and Palestinians, between Jews and Jews, between Jews and all others, between people of different faiths, of backgrounds, of political opinions. Look what's happening in the United States. We need walls? No. We need doors and windows between each other, in our families as well. Because I see it everywhere, and so do you. We curate our news, so we only see the stuff that we agree with. Our Facebook we drop friends if they become too political or too inflammatory, because we don't want to see that on our feed. We do the same thing with our music. We only take the song we want and not the whole rest of the album. If you don't do that, your kids do that. It used to be that families would watch TV together in the evening, and they would endure each other's program. And they'd have a conversation in the process. And now we're all on our own screens and in our own rooms, and because of PVRs, we're watching it in our own time frame. In Judaism, we have so many flavors of synagogues, so many nuanced organizations for this or that cause, that it's an alphabet soup of acronyms and collections of people. And if you look what's happening in Jewish federations across the continent now, campaigns are dwindling. Ours is doing well, but I think the trend is downward. But philanthropy is growing. So what does that tell us? Well, Jews are still giving, but they're micro-targeting their tzedakah. I only want to give to this, and God forbid I should give to that. I'll give this a try, but not that. Maybe it's better for tzedakah. I'm actually sure that it is. But I don't think it's so good for the Jewish people. And so I bring you back to Whitehorse and our experience this past week in the Yukon, where these 25 Jews all came together for this bat mitzvah. And all of their non-Jewish friends and all of this young girl's non-Jewish classmates, they all showed up for this simcha. And I led a Saturday morning service in the backyard of a family that was hosting the bat mitzvah on their deck, where I got eaten alive by mosquitoes. And in the congregation were 6 Israelis, a clearly yeshiva, well, he told me later, he'd grown up in a yeshiva, who walked in with an all-Hebrew siddur, which he couldn't navigate, but I helped him find where we were in our own siddur compared to his. So I guess a lapsed Orthodox Jew. Plenty of secular, non-observant Jews. and a smattering of Reform and conservative Jews from Edmonton and other places that had come in for the bat mitzvah. And we made it work. And it was a beautiful service, not because of anything I did, but because they were all together and nothing separated. And it took me back almost 20 years, more than 20 years, almost 25 years, to my first student pulpit when I was the chief rabbi of Visalia, California. If you've never heard about it, don't worry. Visalia is this not actually so small town in the breadbasket of California where they grow things, mostly citrus. And the Jewish community of about 100 families. And you would think 100 families, it sort of fits that old joke about the guy on the desert island, right? And he built 2 synagogues, the one he goes in and the one he doesn't. But that's not this community. They built one building. It has a kosher kitchen. It serves Orthodox, Reform, Conservative, Reconstructionist, Israeli, and every flavor of Jew all together, and they make it work. They're a Reform synagogue, but that's only because when they said they wanted to become a congregation, this is the story, the conservative movement sent a letter and the Reform movement sent a rabbi. But in small communities, you have to make it work because you can't build fences between each other. You have to have doors and windows. You have to open up your spaces. And we make it work in this community too, and I think back just a month or two ago to when Lord Jonathan Sachs spoke at Shard Tzedek. The whole community was there. On Erev Shabbos. We all came out. It was beautiful. And we do that in this community. It's one of the reasons Sharon and I were so enamored with it when we first came. But we need to do more of it, not only in communities and by institutions that can show the courage to do it, but in our lives as well. Do you know the name of your neighbors? Not the neighbors that were there when you moved in, but the ones that have moved in since. What about the people behind you? Have you broken bread together? Have you spent time together? Where are there walls and fences in your life that you could put up doors and windows? Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkanotecha Yisrael. How beautiful are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel, but they would be more beautiful if they were one tent and we all dwelled together. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be God's will. Amen. Our service continues, page 586. We rise for a Aleinu.